No, you don't need the.
I'm doing this my way. He a legend, he a legend, he a legend. He a legend, he a legend, he a legend. He a legend. Welcome to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league. Welcome to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league of Ida.
What's up, everybody? It's Pikel with League of Items, and today I'm going to go through the World's 2020 80 carry list. Similar to all the other lists, this is going to be a tiered breakdown, so I don't think there are gigantic differences between a lot of these 80 carries, and I know, based on the kind of comments I've gotten on other videos, I understand that there's a fundamental difference between how I look at things and how other people look at things, and that's fine. I've never claimed to be the kind of person to tell you what everyone else thinks. That's just not how I am. That's not how I look at things. I mean, if you want to go credentials against credentials, I mean, I think my track record speaks for itself. People who have been watching me this year have seen how well I've done. They saw the preseason LPL video about Sunning, and now a lot of people are talking about Sunning as a potential world's dark horse. So I think my track record speaks for itself. In regards to how I'm rating the players in this tier list, I think that there was someone who posted a comment on one of my other videos. We got into a little bit of a disagreement, and ultimately the person seemed somewhat reasonable at the end of the conversation. And it basically comes down to, like I said, a fundamental difference between how I look at things and how some other people look at things. Some people want you to look at recent performance, and that is the easiest way to get trapped into having bad information about a player. The person was basically telling me, like, you know, ideologically you're flawed because you're not taking recent performance into consideration at all. The fact that all of these players are at the World Championship is based off of recent performance. So going from the like 50 worldwide 80 carries or 60 or 70, whatever number it is, in professional leagues that have a chance at actually making it to Worlds, getting from that point to the World Championship is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for me. So I don't even have to worry about recent performance because all of these players have been winning recently, and you can't depend on statistics to tell you which player is better than the other when they've all qualified for Worlds. A lot of the time it comes down to champion pool, it comes down to talent level, it comes down to how long have they been a professional in League of Legends, how much Worlds experience do they have, how much professional experience do they have in general, and that's a lot of that's the kind of thing that I take more into consideration. I think that talent is more important than anything else. Now, if you told me in my comment section, Pikel, I think that you're wrong about this player's talent, here's why, I'll listen to you. I go back and forth with a lot of people about my opinions on these things. I don't have I don't mind talking about these things when people give me actual reasons, but if I tell you that I'm making this tier list based off of X, Y, and Z, and you come at me and say, oh, well, you should actually be looking at A, B, and C, it's like, how are we going to have a conversation? It doesn't make much sense. But let's get into this video for 80 carries specifically. I've broken it down into tiers again, and I think that there is some mobility between the tiers, meaning a lot of these players can go up a tier, down a tier, but ultimately they're relatively similar. So let's just get started, and I'll try to explain everything as I go. So I think the worst 80 carry out of all of the people listed is Wild Turtle. I think that Wild Turtle is completely dependent on his team for success. Wild Turtle is not a mechanical superstar. Wild Turtle makes a lot of mistakes, a lot of mental mistakes, where he's getting caught out in side lanes for no reason. He is not moving around within a team fight correctly when his summoners are taken into consideration. There are just a lot of pitfalls with Wild Turtle. anybody who's watched my videos for a long period of time understands that I don't think that Wild Turtle is a world's caliber AD carry. Next up, we have Bruce. Bruce is from Machi. I don't know enough about Machi to give him a real ranking relative to everyone else, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he's better than Wild Turtle. But that's about it. So next up, we have Kramer. The reason I'm low on Kramer is because stylistically, we see Kramer is very good at things like Senna, where he's a hardcore supportive champion. But when Kramer is asked to carry games, I feel like typically he will not be able to do that. So since they are the they're probably the fourth best Chinese team at the World Championship, in their games against Suning, Huanfeng is the carry player, Kramer is not. In the matchup against JDG and Top Esports, it's the exact same thing. One team has a player that can carry more often than Kramer can. That's an important distinction to be made. Regardless of what their champion pools have looked like in the past or what they can look like at the World Championship, I will not be picking Suning, or I will not be picking LGD to beat teams with better AD carries in general. It depends on what the World Championship meta looks like, and we're not sure yet, but I think it's going to be mid and jungle centric, so I'm not too concerned with Kramer playing things like Senna. That's just how I see it. Next up, we have Doublelift. So Doublelift, I think most people would agree, is past his prime. I think that within TSM, Doublelift has actually done a good job of identifying how he needs to play in order to function within the team. So Bjergsen is the leader, not necessarily the carry. But a lot of the time, Bjergsen will be the carry. Broken Blade can be the carry as well. So Doublelift isn't required to be that type of player. We haven't seen it much where Doublelift actually carries a game. And again, there might be people who disagree with me and say, oh, look at this game. He had 10 kills. It's like most of the time, kills are not a good indicator of who's actually creating the winning difference for their team. Next up, we have Tactical. So Tactical, I'm not doing this like in order of how I would rank them within the B tier, because I think a lot of these players are just replaceable. Like, I do think that some are better than others at their peak, but right now, based off of things like recent performance plus talent, this is kind of how I have it laid out. So Tactical. Tactical is very overrated as a rookie. It's funny because the LCS will continuously post things about Tactical being the rookie of the split, being extremely good. And Tactical has shown that he can play extremely well in high pressure situations. For example, I think it was either a quadra-kill or a pentakill, a quadra-kill or a pentakill, defending the base, and it ultimately led to them winning the series. So those are important plays to take into consideration, but that opportunity won't even present itself in most games. So Tactical, I think, belongs in the B tier, not necessarily a difference maker. Perks, I think Perks is one of the players that has a ton of mobility within the different tiers, because Perks has been playing terribly this split for the most part, has been kind of carried by Caps and Wonder and Yonkos. I think that at his peak, Perks is the second best player on the team currently, but it's been very bad, and I understand the situation. Well, I shouldn't even say that I understand the situation. I know the story of what's going on. Perks' father passed away. Terrible for him to go through this. And I think for the most part, Perks has not been the same player since that point. I don't want to even pretend like I know what's going on in regards to that situation. But in terms of how Perks has played, it's been significantly worse, especially in the summer split when G2 is going through a lot of their problems. I cannot separate the European AD carries really at all. I think that they're stylistically pretty different from one another, and all pretty close in terms of how good they are. I do think Perks has the highest upside. Maybe Carsey's probably third in terms of upside. Hansama right now is probably second. I think if we look a couple of years down the road, I think Carsey's upside might be a little higher. But for right now, who is next? Carsey. So Carsey, I love Carsey's ability to play Senna at a very high level. The team embraces it, and they have a lot of good team compositions where Carsey is on Senna, Kaiser is on things like Wukong or Pantheon or just other champions that work well with Senna. I think Senna, even after the nerf, will be an important champion for Worlds. So there is good upside there. My concern is that Carsey against players like Perks and Caps in spring wasn't able to create the winning difference for their team. So that is a little concerning. Because, I mean, for the past 6 months, I've been telling people that watch my videos, Fnatic and G2, the long-term track record of how good they are in the playoffs and in the World Championship. It should hold a lot of weight. So until we see Mad Lions actually kill off one of those teams, it's tough to think that Carsey can carry them past Perks or Rekkles. Next up, we have Rekkles. So Rekkles obviously has the World Championship experience. Perks does as well, in terms of getting to the finals. For Rekkles, there are a lot of different champions that Rekkles has played at the World Championship. He even went into the Garen Yuumi. So they're always looking for an advantage. I think that we should give credit to Fnatic for that, not necessarily Rekkles. If you told me that Rekkles was going to play a hyper carry against Perks or even Caps, I think I'd take the Perks Caps side of that. If Rekkles was playing a hyper carry against Carsey, I could see them eventually getting to the point in the game where that will win them the matchup. So that's kind of like how I'm thinking about the European AD carries in general. I think they do have different ways to match up one another. They have winning chances against one another, but there isn't a huge talent disparity relative to one another once we start taking China and Korea into consideration. Next up, we have Hansama. So Hansama is the kind of player that we haven't seen do it on the international stage consistently. I believe Hansama was on the same Worlds team as Power of Evil and Ignar when Misfits made a run a couple of years ago. And in one of the first matches that Rogue had this year, Hansama was flashing forward, making extremely aggressive plays, and I love that about Hansama. I think he is much more likely to play that way than Carsey, so I think that Hansama's current carry ceiling is a little bit higher. Isn't as good at the supportive Senna style of things, which is actually a negative in this meta. But if it gets to the hyper carries, I think that Hansama could potentially help his team exceed expectations. I don't have a lot of faith in Rogue, but I expect once they get to the World Championship, it's going to be Inspired, Larson, and Hansama trying to make crazy plays to get to the next level. Next up, we have Deft and Loken. So full disclosure, I'm not a huge fan of Loken. I think that JDG is mostly Kanavi's team. Kanavi dictates how well their team does. Some people will disagree with me on that. I think they're wrong. They think I'm wrong. That's completely fine. In a jungle carry meta like this, well, even for the past year and a half or 2 years, Kanavi's been the most important player for JDG. I'm not sure how you could create an argument other than Kanavi being the most important player. I haven't even heard anyone try to make that argument. It's just people get upset about how I rank Loken and Yagao. So I don't know. It's kind of a mystery to me. The people who look at Loken and think to themselves, "Oh my God, this person's an incredible AD carry," are the ones who don't understand. Well, I shouldn't say that, because some of them do understand, but they might just be weighing it differently. But the way that I look at it is that Loken's able to shine in a lot of these games when they have a lead because of Kanavi, because of Zoom, and even because of Yagao. I would put Yagao above Loken in terms of relative strength, according to the position. But we'll just move on. Next up is Deft. So this is purely a respect ranking. I think it's very possible that at this World Championship, Deft's performance will look more like a B or a C player because of injury. And I mentioned this before. Deft has some health issues, a back problem. I get it. I understand how horrible it is to try to play video games or sit in a chair or do anything for an extended period of time with a bad back. I have a bad back, so I get it. I'm not holding it against him. So maybe I'm being overly sympathetic for that reason. But Deft has not been playing well recently. So I could easily see somebody making the argument that Deft should be closer to where Perks is ranked. Whatever. I'm not going to fight with you about it. Let's just move on. I missed Ghost earlier. So Ghost, I think, is similar to Karzi in the sense that Ghost is an extremely good Senna player, and it works really well for the team, can play all the supportive AD carries, and will function well within the team. Shouldn't become a gigantic issue for Damwon Gaming at the World Championship. Should allow Showmaker and Canyon and Noguri to carry, and can play his role well. So if anything, Ghost would go down into the C level because it's a function of the team's ability to win, not their ability to create the winning difference. Then in the S tier, I think the three best AD carries at the World Championship are Ruler, Huanfeng, and Jackie Love. Jackie Love, I think, is given probably too much credit for Invictus Gaming's championship in terms of mechanical ability. It has been said that Jackie Love is integral in shot calling for Top Esports, but also when Invictus Gaming won their World Championship. So that's very important. But mechanically, I don't think Jackie Love is as good as people say he is. Still one of the best AD carries in the world, but he is not the strongest mechanical AD carry in the world. Great player. Will not be an issue for Top Esports, I don't think. But Knight is really the main player on Top Esports team. So if you're the kind of person who says, well, Knight is the best mid laner, Jackie Love is the best AD carry, Karsa's the best jungler, then, I mean, I probably can't have a meaningful conversation with you. Because if they win, you're just going to feel like you were right. And if they lose, you'll have a bunch of reasons of why it wasn't Jackie Love or Karsa's fault. So best not to talk about it. Huanfeng, I think, has shown throughout this year that they're one of the best AD carries in China, and by proxy, one of the best AD carries in the world. I think it's kind of inevitable to think of those things as hand in hand. If you're one of the best AD carries in China, you have to be one of the best AD carries in the world. Huanfeng, when Suning was not playing very well in the spring, was still a bright spot for Suning. And then when we got into the summer, we got into this jungle carry meta. SFM and Angel were able to carry more weight. Bin was able to carry more weight. And Huanfeng wasn't asked to do as much in the summer. But even before the season started, I said that Huanfeng, as long as they get to the World Championship and the meta continues to move towards an AD carry-centric meta, Huanfeng will become more and more important. My biggest concern for Huanfeng and Suning is their affinity for Jhin. I don't think Jhin is a good champion. I think Jhin is a horrible champion. I think it's a bad damage profile for late-game teamfights. But they pick it and they win with it. So either I hope they pick it and win, or they get away from it and save themselves from a bunch of horrible losses that will make me rip my hair out. But yeah, Huanfeng, I think, easily one of the best AD carries at the World Championship. There's no way you could justify ranking Huanfeng outside of the top 5 AD carries. There is no line of thinking where that would happen. And then last up, we have Ruler. Ruler is getting the most, either the most or second most fanfare in terms of recent performance. I think that it's accurate. Ruler has won a World Championship, and Ruler is currently the most important player on Gen G. Some people will say it's BDD or Clid, but when you look at these team fights, there's a fundamental difference between like top esports and Gen G. When top esports gets into those late game team fights, most of the time Knight will make some kind of great play in the team fight. When Gen G gets into the late game team fight, it's normally Ruler who is able to pull something out of nowhere. Everybody knows the Ash highlight at this point. Just an incredible play. Maybe not incredible play. It's a very good play. It shows that he is at the peak of mechanical AD carry play. And I don't think anyone would really argue with me on that one. So that's basically it. Ruler and Huanfeng, I think, are mechanically stronger than Jackie Love. Jackie Love, according to most people, will say that Jackie Love's a better shot caller. And I'm willing to give Jackie Love the benefit of the doubt. I do think that we actually did see an increase in skill in terms of shot calling by Top Esports when Jackie Love joined that team, which is why I'm willing to concede that point. But otherwise, I think that between A and B, there's a lot of mobility. Between B and C, there's a lot of mobility. And then Wild Turtle's the worst. If FlyQuest does anything at the World Championship, I'd be shocked if Wild Turtle caused or created the winning difference in those games. So, thanks for watching. And I'll talk to you later.